Hi, this is Ed back again with another supporter video for everybody on Patreon, Subscribe Star, and of course the Hive blockchain as we get into another news roundup here, which is going to be a little bit longer than normal, at least this news roundup, because I've got a lot of stuff to talk about a bit later on. I want to talk about Roald Dahl. Before we get into any of that, there is a group called River Valley Organizing that apparently, according to their conversation on Democracy Now!, will provide free testing to those people affected by the train derailment, and I believe the subsequent, if you're 60 miles away, if you're 100 miles away, you probably could still get testing. They're going to test their water supply for those people for free, they state. And they stated that on Democracy Now! This was sent to me by one of my a commenter there on Telegram, one of the people that watch my videos. I'm keeping them anon, of course, up the top there. So if you want to contact them, there are their contact details. Bear in mind, I know nothing about this particular organization. You should always do your own research into them. But how could there ever be anything wrong, people might ask, with an organization supplying free testing? Well, what you want is you want testing that is accurate. That's the most important, right? You do not want testing that's inaccurate. However, and regarding just drinkable water, of course, this might be very important, and they might be able to do that. Here's some information on the background of the person that you see in the Democracy Now! Video, Emily Wright, and some of their experience on their public LinkedIn profile. And of course, you can contact them through those details. Just wanted to point that out before we get into anything else. Just going to backtrack here a little bit in regarding a few strange anomalies. And this is a bit longer than normal. As I said, I want to get into some Roald Dahl a bit later. What is disaster response? Well, value customer goes into the fact and regarding the burn-off that they had no other choice. And I am subsequently looking at that and reading about it. Seems like the case for me. Of course, the question that a lot of people are asking is the timing to the event. You know, it was said to be managed for a few days, right? In fact, here's a little timeline here. You can read more of that, what our customer says on screen, which is a very interesting point in regarding vinyl chloride and burning it off. Okay, so you're dealing with the third in terms of the crash itself. The big burn off occurring on the 6th of February, according to the timeline. So you have 3 days at which the parts of the train were on fire, and there was things burning, but vinyl chloride was leaking out. Then a few days later, they decide to burn it off, but it doesn't display, the burn off wasn't in line with any of the models for the burn off that they had put together. As Valley Customer points out, they didn't have the gear, and you would expect that. I guess the sad thing is, in regarding these small towns, I know, I grew up in a small town. It's actually smaller, far smaller than East Palestine, okay, far smaller, right? If there was a fire, they would have the gear probably to handle a fire, and that would probably be about it. But you would expect railroad, if there is chemicals going along this railroad continually, that they would have some kind of system. What I want to point out is if you had the fire, if you had the situation on the 3rd, the tank was heating up, why didn't they bring in the National Guard or someone that had these kinds of capabilities? You didn't see it. And that was really the catastrophe that a lot of people are pointing to. Of course, you can see a video here with Millie here. And this is in regarding the truth about the Ohio train derailment. She is talking to her father who managed trains, apparently. Okay, so you can look into that if you want to see more information. Her father was saying that, yes, the burn-off was the right tactic. And it looks like it was the right tactic, although it caused catastrophic results, right? Everything in the scenario causes very problematic results. The question is, why the timing between the 3rd and the 6th of February, and you don't have the National Guard shop in force with very sophisticated, or at least you'd expect more sophisticated mechanisms to handle stuff like this, at least even the gear needed for it, right? Because there are a lot of people walking around, as you could see in those videos I played the other day, and they didn't have hazmat gear on when they were attending to this particular event here. They didn't have any protective gear on at all. But it's what they did in order to try to manage it. I guess they're just a small town. Something interesting here in regarding the whole event. First time, as stated the other day, actually, this is just a reminder because there's another coincidence here. January 2023 was the first time the document regarding the toxicological profile for vinyl chloride was updated on the CDC website. This is the authoritative source, government, signed off on. Signed and all these types of things on January 2023. That is the first time in 17 years that document has been updated. The first time in 17 years the authoritative document on this, or at least the document that you would draft for the public, that they would look up, not internalized information, with thick textbooks or anything like that, but the draft for public comment here, and that is on January, first time in 17 years. Heck of a coincidence. Here you have another heck of a coincidence. East Palestine launched a digital ID program days before the disaster. There's 4 months ago the actual video. Zero here just pointing to the launch of the program, apparently, which was days before the disaster actually happened. The launch of the program was like 4 months ago, because it's like a test program that you're doing in a small town in order to extract information. It'd be interesting to who stands to gain from this. Let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at the video in regarding that here.
Columbiana County coverage now, and East Palestine is known as the place to be. It's way ahead of the curve on a program to provide better treatment for anyone in the event of an emergency. I learned how it works and how it could help everyone in East Palestine. My ID provides quick medical information for emergency responders. Darlene Chapman is the outreach coordinator for this project, and she's an EMT.
If they're in a situation where they can't tell us or if they don't have any family around, this is something that would make my life easier.
My ID works by taking a camera phone and pointing it at a QR code. It provides valuable medical information such as allergies, breathing difficulties, or other conditions, so you get proper treatment and care.
If anybody sees the QR code, you'll be able to scan this and get the information. So it helps that person, not necessarily just here, but anywhere in the nation.
There are a few options for My ID: a bracelet, key fob, necklace, or attachment on your watch band. You can choose the one which fits your lifestyle best. That's up to you. Orders will start in January. The fire department has already collected $5,000 in donations to help.
That's our ultimate goal. We want to be able to give this for free to the citizens and provide them with that extra layer of care so that we can better treat them.
The offer includes Unity Township, which is served by the East Palestine Fire Department. These items cost around $20 each. You can even buy it for yourself. The fire department is hoping you'll be willing to wear it.
My goal is to have 100% of our residents and the citizens we serve in the township to have one of these and be working with them to make sure that we can treat them better and provide the.
So there you have it. So this program that's been talked about, as you can see the video here, you can look it up. This was posted 4 months ago. This was actually operational, started to be operational in January, right? Just before everything that happened, right? Actually, you look at the same document, both January 2023, January 2023, when that program became operational. Another hell of a coincidence, isn't it? And this, of course, this device it's just an ID that's on you that will link back to a government database with your health, or some database with your health profile on it. And the argument here in being, or the outcome of it, is they want to justify the ability for your health information, your private medical information, to be placed in these separate databases. That would be the argument in the background. en masse, which has happened here in New Zealand. The last few years, New Zealand took everyone's medical information and digitalized it and put it on the internet, basically. Whatever they talk about in terms of closed system, it's on the internet. For instance, someone can access it in the country if they have one of these, which is an ID, a My ID type system. Now, this is what they're pushing out, and of course this digital ID, it's all these types of things. And isn't it interesting that the test case scenario being rolled out in January takes place at, when you have a literal these types of emergency-based systems, right, where everyone's starting to get sick. And then if they look at your chart there, they can just look at your My ID system. So people were saying in the comment section of that video, it's really amazing that they put the system into operation 4 months ago. Actually, yeah, they did 4 months ago, but came into operation in January. At the exact place that they need it now, isn't it? It's a weird thing, isn't it? This person's saying, hopefully people are connecting the dots. Now, there's a lot of coincidences here, but that doesn't... Well, what does that mean? I mean, it also could be a random event, although my opinion heavily leans into Coincidence Valley, if you know what I mean. A lot of things lean in the direction of Coincidence Valley, don't they, these days? Acid rain was spotted as far as Connecticut. That's no surprise if you're burning off this amount of stuff, right? If you're burning off this amount of stuff, then sure, you would get acid rain. And of course, that's easier to deal with than that other particular chemical. However, people couldn't, the meteorological service couldn't connect the dots. They stated that chief meteorologist there of NBC says it's possible the residue is kicked up from dust. But he said he could not explain the chlorine-like odor in West Hartford Friday morning. He doesn't have an explanation for that. Strange acid rain and a strange smell of chlorine. They say the acid rain is the dust from somewhere. They don't know where, or at least they said it's just dust kicked up from the plains. But they state that the chlorine, they have no idea why everything smells of chlorine. Of course, there's the distance. I put together that map between, I believe that's the place they're talking about, between roughly, same type of location, isn't it? Same type of location. So I'm going to talk about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory a bit later on. This person, by the way, Sam Smith, who was a video from him, I'll show you.
Columbiana County coverage.
This is actually from a couple of weeks ago. I'm turning up to a awards ceremony. I was thinking to myself, and regarding that, because here a lot of people have been talking about floods in New Zealand because there was a crisis with flooding. I was thinking to myself, you could use Sam Smith in that specific instance. So I guess his outfit isn't completely useless. If it was flooding, of course, you could use him as a flotation device. One thing in regarding the flooding, I'll just comment on very briefly here in New Zealand. A lot of people are talking about it, saying it's climate change. Of course they are. Both parties, by the way, both prime ministers on all the parties here in New Zealand believe in climate change. They pray to the climate change god by throwing money at it constantly. They all say this is climate change. Not one person in the media ever talked about the fact is that you're going to have increased flood events with increased amounts of water or rainfall if you fire 30% of your workforce across the board. That includes drainage management, that includes the people that work with the rivers to negate flooding or put in place measures for floodplains and things like that. We had ambulances here at the height of this not show up for 40 minutes after they were called. There were just no ambulances. That's just talking about the medical profession where they fired 30% of people. but no one would ever make the connection. Suddenly there's flooding everywhere, all the drains are blocked up, right? No connection. I'm not saying that the weather doesn't play a heavy role. Of course it does. But if you have no brakes on the car and you crash, it's not just the fact that you were going fast enough to get injured that's the problem. By the way, when they say plant-based meat, this is the plant they're talking about. No kidding. No kidding at all. Well, let's just go into something else here, talking about NGOs. So the White House was saying that they're going to deliver environmental justice and implement Justice 40, the Justice 40 initiative. This is what the White House is doing. This new executive order by Biden includes a promise to deliver environmental justice and implement Justice 40 as an initiative. What is Justice 40? Asked Jeremy Redfern. Well, it's exactly what you think it is. According to the Justice 40 website, they are, quote, a collective of leading environmental justice movement leaders, academics, and advocates committed to working with the Biden administration to direct 40% of climate and clean infrastructure investments to frontline communities. What does that mean when you get past all the jargon and the virtue signaling? It means that the same entities that have invested heavily in technologies that literally are destroying communities, technologies that aren't really green at all, it's just restructuring and recalibrating where the money goes. They've heavily invested in these sectors, which they're artificially pumping up here with government money now to make an anti-competitive environment where these places have a large advantage subsidized by the government. Then they say they're a success. It boosts all their stock profile, all their stock, and they cash out. And entire communities and entire infrastructure collapses or doesn't work because of that, because you can't replace a coal-burning power plant with a windmill. But that doesn't matter. All that matters is you can monetize the failure of a system now. You can monetize destroying catastrophically a community and a country. And you can make out like bandits. That's my interpretation of what's going on here. Okay? Of course, the leaders of Justice 40, one of the leaders is a radical Marxist, apparently. Right? Radical. Does that surprise anybody? No. No, it doesn't. I'm not saying these people don't believe it to some extent in what they're shopping around. What difference does that mean? You go to Jim Jones, he believed in putting cyanide in the Kool-Aid. It wasn't Kool-Aid, it was something else actually, I think. What does it matter if someone believes in anything? It's the outcome that counts, right? By the way, Dr. John Campbell had a really interesting comparison there as, he had this interesting, this interesting parallel. It was this, causation. Correlation doesn't equal causation, or the old thing. And he had this picture of these people that had eaten this poison pie. this one person and this whole group of people had eaten this poison pie and fell down dead, and then the other people were saying correlation doesn't equal causation or whatever. Yeah. And so they ate the pie and then they all fall down dead. And then John Campbell said, sometimes correlation does equal causation. Of course, that particular phrase has been used by a psyop, as a psyop these days. Of course, the real fact is you observe reality, right? You have to observe reality. And you have to, it's like Sherlock Holmes. You see, Watson, but you do not observe, or whatever that particular phrase was. Talking about this Justice 40, but I think in this particular comment here by Elon Musk might be about EcoHealth, because EcoHealth itself was an NGO that operated under with funding from the National Institute of Health, right? EcoHealth, i.e. operating there in Wuhan. So you have a for-profit company, which is the NGO, is actually acting for profit because it's funding the technology by proxy, which is going to later feed out to other people who are going to benefit from it, who are part of EcoHealth, as well as a number of other shady things. Of course, in actual fact, people are saying it's just a CIA cutout. However, whatever the case is, Elon Musk had this from ChatGPT, asking ChatGPT if it could actually speak about how non-for-profit organizations can be established for public benefit, etc. And also they can be monetized, right? They can actually be businesses pretending to be non-for-profits. Where have you seen that before? Well, I'll show you my example, which I've been ranting on for years in a moment. ChatGPT stated, non-profit organizations are established for public benefit and are expected to operate in a transparent and accountable manner. Starting a for-profit business under the guise of a non-for-profit organization is obviously a violation, etc. Only posting this to show that Elon Musk was thinking about this. I think this is in relation to what the who knows? There's so many NGOs that are acting for profit these days, aren't there? But the classic scenario is they're everywhere. For instance, here's the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I'll be talking about this forever because this thing is such an exaggerated example of this scheme. He is reinventing the toilet and saving Africa or saving poor nations, saving them by increasing sanitation around the toilet system. So he's building these huge, elaborate toilets, some of them with all these pipes, and he goes to one where it's almost like an entire factory that's going to take waste and it's going to provide clean drinking water. That's not a toilet, right? This technology is something that you're using in order to purify waste at a waste treatment plant. That's not going to be something for poor communities. Sanitation in toilets is easy. You create a long drop and it costs nothing. But you are creating the guise of doing something else, but you're actually creating technology that you're going to directly be able to sell off in other areas. And that's an NGO. It means that your research and development doesn't cost you any money. Right? It doesn't cost you any money anymore. But every single place is filled with these poisonous NGOs and these fake places, and they are an explosion of these onto the world these days. Here's another story about an explosion that's taking place. And that is the idea that a troll has entered the environment. People can't even fathom it. Now, I remember people, actually, Value Customer talked about this in a comment a while back, how their hope was this person was a super troll, or the equivalent of someone trolling. It kind of looks like that now. Of course, you're all aware of the story with the teacher that came to school with a huge prosthetic, Z-sized prosthetic breast. It was so over the top and so outlandish, people were saying, is this person trolling? Well, as you might be aware, they took photos of this person on the weekend. They were going for a walk to pick up some milk. And look at them. Now, you've seen a lot of people walking around as, transgender people on the weekend, right? But they never look like this. This looks like Tim Dillon, the comedian, as people are pointing out. It just looks like a guy. It just looks like a guy going for a walk. That's when he's not at school. Now, the further evidence is apparently people saying that some of the students were talking about prior to this, he was upset with the endless political correctness. So it looks like he's in there for the long game. Of course, he's so far in now, he can never give up. He will have to take this all the way to the Supreme Court, right? If they try to fire him. If he stops now, then they will persecute him. He has to ride this all the way. Quite possibly, he's going to have to dress up like this outside his home. Now, I should say that's alleged. Of course, I do not know what's in his mind. Maybe it's all like, it's just on the weekend I'm just dressed normally, and at school I am I've got Z-size prosthetic breasts, and I identify as, X and X, or whatever they identify as. One thing I was looking at was culture lately. Now, in regarding this, I was thinking to myself, and I've talked about this a little bit before, in the 70s and the 80s, you had a fashion or a culture around things, right? People dressed a certain ways. This shows that there was a community zeitgeist, right? That people were connected in a certain way, where fashion trends, they moved out amongst the youth mainly, right? Or a new way to have your hair moved out amongst the youth, right? That there was this kind of connective thing, and all other types as well, and just younger people, I guess. Well, I don't know. I wasn't doing any, I wasn't singing in the 70s, so I don't know how people used to dress in that scene. But here is the lead singer, and this is from the band The Guess Who, and you are probably aware of them. They sung that famous Canadian band. They've sung a number of famous songs. One was American Woman, which some people state was about the Vietnam War. They sung American Woman, and this is in, I believe, the very early 70s, late 60s, like 1969, 1970s. That's at a guess. I haven't tracked down the specific date, but you can see the lead singer there. Now, this is in the later on in the 70s, and you can see them there. So you can see there is a large cultural shift there. The main thing I'm pointing this out is this doesn't exist today, right? It's like a carnival of weirdness. There's no specific pattern at all. Now, you might say it's the internet. People become introverted. People do not, they become individualized in their experiences and expression. Sure. But what does that say about the glue that holds our cultures together if you never see any specific change? For instance, I could go back to 2000, right? Where, back in the days, and I lived then, and I can say specifically that there is no difference I see in the way that people dress then and the way that people dress now. And that was the earlier stages of the internet, of course. The only large shifts were maybe around mid-90s, really. And that's when it started to die off, the idea of a unifying cultural zeitgeist, I guess. In terms of, especially expression in regarding fashion probably has, it's directly related to, reproduction or something. It's like a peacocking. You're dressing a certain style. You're showing people you're with it, or connected to that key demographic. Where people are reproducing, etc. And you are showing them that nearly everything's about that, really, in any of these large expressionistic scenes, right, like music or art or anything like that. Not that that's a bad thing, it's uniquely human, actually. But you don't have that anymore, right? There's no real way that people dress unless it's almost degenerative, right? Unless it goes in a direction which makes them look, ridiculous. Like, if you look at clothing in the past, Levi's or brands that were expressing things, it was all about fitness, right? I'm talking about in terms of, you look like you're a sexually reproductive individual, or someone, is desirable. You look physically fit and healthy, and in your prime of your life in the Levi commercials. We've all seen that kind of stuff. Now the scene is, and seems in fashion, is to look like you are, that you have no ability to reproduce, or you're kind of like so unfit, you probably could you probably would get, you know what I mean? You know what I mean anyway. Not all the time, but even the models. I mean, the models now are so skinny. They're either in the strange wokest narrative where they are, they don't look very well, or they're so skinny they look like they'll fall over and die. The portrayal of it isn't someone that's healthy in any direction. Of course, these are subversion mechanisms. Look at this individual. By the way, I do have a clip of him. I'll play that here. There he is at the awards. It's the flotation device. I'm aware that I just played this earlier, but there it is there anyway. Just playing it again. The flotation device for the floodplains. But by the way, when the lead singer got this mustache, he never removed it. Today, he's still wearing a mustache, which there's nothing wrong with that. If you find something that works, keep it. I just thought I'd point that out. Long hair left, by the way. Why not? I mean, this was a significant change. The song is the same, though, but he seems more like a lounge singer now. Someone that's singing other people's songs. I don't know. But we're up to 31 minutes. So I'm headed now to Roald Dahl. By the way, small story. He's had his charges reduced, Alec Baldwin. Why? Because he's Alec Baldwin, that's why. People are saying it's because of some... People are saying it's because they put together a law after he committed the crime, which they shoehorned in order to convict him of it. That is giving a reason they've constructed in order to let him off on a lesser charge. Right? They're all part of a machine which is corrupt. So you might or might not have heard about Roald Dahl. Well, Roald Dahl, of course, is a famous author. He wrote a bunch of children's stories, including Matilda, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, The Witches, as well as many others. Most people don't know. I know I've talked about Roald Dahl in the past. Roald Dahl was a famous children's author, but when you look into his life, it's even more exaggerated than the characters of his novels. Right? He was most likely, he knew Ian Fleming, who wrote James Bond, but he was of that universe of the intelligence community. He was a spy. Right, he dated big-time Hollywood actors. He was an attaché to the British, I think it was Air Force. He was in the Royal Air Force as well. He dined with Winston Churchill. His life is insane. He was a very good photographer. He actually invented a device with these people that he used to have these remote control model boats with to save his son's life, who had a brain injury, and the hospital didn't have the ability to actually fix him because there was a build-up of fluid on his brain. He invented a device which is still in use today with his friend there, which drilled into the hole to release the pressure from what was happening in the brain. And his son's alive today. Anyway, let's not get into his life, but he's a very interesting character, very well known in the in the literary world, not even just for his children's story, but before all this, he wrote thrillers and crime, and he wrote wrote a bunch of anthologies. Roald Dahl's Tales of the Unexpected being one, which is many good tales in the vein of crime with twists and things of that nature. And all these types of people he worked with, famous directors, of course. Forgotten his name. Alfred Hitchcock. He worked with Alfred Hitchcock. Anyway, here's the thing about this. He wrote a bunch of children's books. That's what people are knowing he is known for today. Now, he wrote these when he was in, I think he was in his 60s or late 50s or something like that. It was later on in his life, right? After he had accomplished all these other things. So now they stated, or Puffin has stated, that they're rewriting a bunch of things in his children's books, and his estates agreed with this. Here's Matt Taibbi going on about it. There's Andrew Doyle. So here are some of the changes that Puffin has made to his books. And you will not believe the kinds of things that they have rewritten. These aren't simple word changes like in Tom Sawyer. I think it's Tom Sawyer. Sorry, in Tom Sawyer are saying there's a few changes or words changed that, might be considered, people would find offensive today and things of that nature. But it's not that. It's changing the meaning of whole sentences, deleting entire, you would say, paragraphs. For instance, here is the witches, and this is between the 2001 edition and the 2022 edition. Here's the line: "Don't be foolish," my grandmother said. They've deleted all of this. Mainly, you can't go around pulling the hair of every lady you meet, even if she's wearing gloves. Just you try it and see what happens. Okay, they removed that. Here's another thing they changed. The witches, even if she is working as, they removed a cashier in the supermarket or typing letters for a businessman, and they replaced it with, even if she's working as a top scientist or running a business. So this is so sad. The world can't say that women work jobs that are not top scientists or running businesses. The majority of the population, men and women, just work normal jobs, like as cashiers or, some other job, maybe as a cleaner or something. Not everyone's running a top scientist. So what does this do to a child? It creates an artificial expectation. Right? Says that all women should be scientists or running businesses. And then they look at their mum, and what does their mum do? Right? Their mum works at a bakery. I have a friend that works at a bakery, by the way. Right? They're not running as a top scientist. Look at the twisted, warped view of reality that these people have. Here's another one. This is Matilda. She went on an olden day sailing ship with Joseph Conrad. She went to Africa with Ernest Hemingway and to India with Rudyard Kipling. They changed this to remove Joseph Conrad and insert Jane Austen. Then they left Hemingway and they removed Rudyard, the author of the Jungle Book, and they added John Steinbeck for some reason. She went to Africa with Ernest Hemingway and California with John Steinbeck. They wanted to remove India. Why? Matilda, you can see all of these. For instance, here is Matilda 2001 versus 2022. They removed this entire passage here. This is the passage. She wore heavy makeup and had one of those unfortunate bulging figures where the flesh appears to be strapped in all around the body to prevent it from falling out. They removed that. I.e., something that kids would find funny, probably. At least when I was a kid, these are the kinds of things in the book that made it good. Right? It was all about gross things, and crocodiles that eat people. Roald Dahl. Right? They changed Dickens or Kipling to Dickens or Austen. They're changing characters in there that he referenced. Hardly the kind of man a wife dreams about. They changed that into Matilda to hardly the man of my dreams. So they removed the word wife. So it changes the entire context of the sentence because he was referring to what his wife, the kind of man his wife dreams about. They want to get rid of wife, right? So here it says his wife recognized the signs immediately and made herself scarce. removed that entirely. Matilda took the knife she had been eating with, removed that. He looked like a low-grade book maker dressed up for his daughter's wedding. They removed that as well. Look at all, I don't know if you can see the screen or if you're just looking at this, but there is a whole bunch of things that they removed. Just crazy stuff. For instance, here is in the BFG. They've changed the word black for dark for some reason. For instance, the BFG had a black cloak. They've changed that to dark. I don't know why. Because the color black is offensive, is that it? Like a color? Well, actually, black is the absorption of many colors, isn't it? So here's another one. Felt strong fingers grasping hold of her, and then that's been removed. Here's another one. Greeks is all full of yuckiness. No giant is eating Greeks, ever. He's talking about Greek people eating them, right? Because the BFG is talking about other giants eating people. The other giants doing that. Why not, Sophie asks. Greeks from Greece is all tasting greasy, the giant said. It's a joke, right? The adults get the joke. They removed that entire passage because it said something about people from Greece being greasy. It's like people from Chile being, hot or tasting like a chili pepper. The chili pepper has nothing to do with the naming of the country or the something produced in the region of the country as far as I'm aware. It's just like being greasy has nothing to do with Greece. Although there is hot weather over there, so I guess if you're sitting out in the sun for a while, you might look a bit greasy if you've got all of that sun lotion on. Here's another one. They removed this entire passage. Japanese, and remember this is the BFG talking, so it's kind of like a bit, it's not normal talk, right? Japanese beans is very small, so a giant will need to gobble up about 6 Japanese beans, talking about human beings, before he is feeding full up. Others, like the Norway people and Yankee Doodles, is ever so much bigger, and usually 2 or 3 of those makes a good tuck-in. It's talking about eating people. They removed that entire passage. People might say that's culturally insensitive because Japanese people are probably shorter, well, they are shorter than European people. But it's just a bit of fun, right? You're going to remember that if you can't what do you do with your friends, right? You prod them and make fun of them sometimes, where there's a little bit of back and forward. What do you do with your enemies? If you're in an environment which you are surrounded by, you never say anything. You're very careful. Being able to be jovial and poke or make fun of your enemies is something that doesn't exist in an enemy environment, right? All that comes in reference as a cruel type of propaganda where you are chastising them. What you did see, to be fair, in World War II and regarding the Japanese and the war propaganda and the over-exaggeration of racial stereotypes and caricatures, you certainly did see that. But in terms of just prodding at people, I don't know. It's an interesting world, isn't it? So they've changed Eskimo to Inuit. I guess you could say, yeah, I wouldn't change anything, but I guess you could say, yeah, sure. You probably change that. But that's like one word. What they did is they changed a nice fat Eskimo into a nice Inuit. They removed this entire sentence here, and you can see some of these things that they removed. For instance, here's a classic. They changed, I don't have a mother or father, which Sophie's saying, I believe. They changed that to I don't have parents because the word mother and father is offensive. Another one is, oh, look how ugly they are. They removed that entirely. Just a interesting situation, isn't it? For instance, here they've removed an entire paragraph. I don't know why. They've removed it entirely. Like it's like someone is just they might as well just go get another writer to write it, right? They're just changing and rewriting everything. Here you have an author that's largely regarded in the children's space as a master or a grandmaster of their craft for children. Right, the language and the cadence and the simplicity and the over-exaggeration has an effect which makes it entertaining. That's why he's one of the biggest selling authors of all time. But someone probably with a degree in English, and apparently they consulted some kind of like bunch of a test audience or something, then that's all it takes in order to rewrite this individual stuff. Look at all the removals here. Aren't they fantastic? Removed. No higher than my knee? Removed. Look at their funny long hair? Removed. But they can't be real people, Charlie said. This is from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Removed. Important. Direct from Loompa Land, said Mr. Wonka proudly. They come from Loompa Land. Poor little Oompa Loompas, removed. The bark of the bong bong tree, removed. You only had to mention the word cacao to an Oompa Loompa and he would start dribbling at the mouth, removed. Just on and on and on. Enormous, isn't he? Removed. If you have got a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory edition that's prior to 2001 or even earlier, save that one, because in the Apocalypse by the Fire, you can read the real version, not the rewritten one. Here's some more classics. I do not wish to speak badly about women. Most women are lovely. Removed. This is from The Witches, which is a classic children's book. I'm talking about things I read growing up. I don't I don't read The Witches now. Okay. Mid 40s, right? What's a man in his mid 40s supposed to be reading? Well, if I'm anything like my dad, I'd be reading westerns. Those dime store westerns. It's all he ever read. He never read any other books. It was only westerns. With gunfighters on the front. Every single book. Actually, that's not true. He did read some Wilbur Smith. But there was no Clive Cussler. There was none of them. It was only westerns and that one Wilbur Smith book. That's all I ever seen him read. Yeah. Even if she is working as a cashier. Okay, we've already seen that one. I do not wish to speak badly. We've read that one. There was something indecent about a bald woman. Removed. Okay. How horrid, disgusting, my grandmother said. Removed. When an actress wears a wig, only if you or I were to wear a wig, we would be putting it over our hair, but a witch has to put it on her naked scalp. Removed. The idea that the witches had a bald head and squared feet is critical to the story. Perhaps he had been forced to jam her thumb down the spout of a boiling kettle until it steamed away. Removed. Okay, so you can see all the Salman Rushdie, of course, I have various opinions on, but whatever the case is, he came out and said that the rewrites were absurd censorship. A lot of people that are critical of this are all of the older generation, it would seem, because the new generation think they, don't care, perhaps. Who knows? There they are. The word fat has been wiped from every one of Dahl's books. Augustus Gloop only described as enormous. The big friendly giant in the BFG no longer wears a black cloak, as the words black and white no longer exist in the new editions. This is like communist, this is like the Soviet Union style censorship. The death of art is the inability to be able to express yourself the way that you believe, or that the way you want to, right? You already have that problem with just the translation of what's in your mind to what's on, what you want to put out there. But now they tell you to rewrite it. What is that? That's not art anymore. That's design. That's the difference. You are designing something for a corporate client here. Anyway, what did I get to? 50 minutes, so it was a bit longer, but it was only about 20 minutes, I guess. I just wanted to talk about that Roald Dahl stuff because, it's just a crazy situation, isn't it? It's just a crazy situation to go through these types of things. This is a new world. Let's get the music as we get a little bit of this music going. As we head out of Clown World here, let's play our clown anthem. Here we go. What a clown world we live in. Look at it. Toilet to save the world, it only costs $1 billion. Train wrecks that were burning for 20 miles beforehand and no one noticed. Yeah, what a crazy world. They're going to save the planet in executive order. Anyway, that's probably it. So let's just call it there, I think. In the meantime, of course, stay safe, take care of yourselves, go out, do your own research, decide for yourselves what to believe. Do not believe me. In the meantime, stay safe, and I'll see you all later.